Okay, friends, it's Kurt Klapier here with TeachMomHow.com, and I'm here with Marcy Stoltz. Did I say it right, Marcy?
Yes, she did.
Stoltz. Okay, just wanted to make sure. I should have made sure of that before. I'm here with Marcy Stoltz. Marcy Stoltz, we're interviewing her today because she's the mother of four children ranging from 2 years old to 20 years old who have special needs. And her life has been a whirlwind, to say the least, with all that she's learned from that. And we feel she can share some valuable insight into working with kids with disabilities and different kinds of disabilities, because her kids have all different disabilities. But we're going to today just focus on some stories, some experiences she's had, with no other intent other than hopefully to uplift you if you've gone through similar things, to encourage you if you're just now finding out that one of your kids has a disability, and things from there. And so, Marcy, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Hope you're doing well as well.
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. So, Marcy, let's start off. First off, you're at work today. What do you do for work?
I do human resources and payroll for a music venue here in North Carolina.
Awesome. Is it hot in North Carolina right now?
Yes, very much so.
Hot and humid from what I hear. I've never been there.
The humidity is okay right now, but we're only in June, so come August, we will probably all be melting.
Gotcha, gotcha. So Marcy, you told me before the interview that you have four children with disabilities. Is that all your children? Do you have four, or do you have more children?
Well, we have four that are here with us. I did have a fifth child who was stillborn in between my oldest daughter and my oldest son. His birthday was June 6th, so he would have turned 15. And my son, who was born right after him, is going to be 14 in July. So we kind of had the stillbirth, and then we had my oldest boy, whom I have told many times that, okay, well, it's kind of a blessing, because if that had not happened, I wouldn't have you. So I'm not sure what God has planned for him, but he's a mess.
Can I ask you a question about the stillborn, if you don't mind, if you don't feel like answering it, don't. But there's probably moms that'll watch this program who might have experienced something similar. I never had. The closest thing we've gone through to a stillbirth is a miscarriage, but it was really early in the pregnancy. Um,
Mm.
Anything you learned from that, or any advice you'd give someone that might be grieving something, a stillborn child, or any type of loss of a child?
Well, don't feel bad for being sad. Don't feel like, you'll have people, they'll tell you that they're sorry about your loss. And, loss for you continues. It's not over in a month or 2 months or anything like that. It's going to take a long time. I mean, even though he would have been 15, he's still a member of our family. We still celebrate those remembrance days with him. I mean, he was born on the 6th, but I remember going to the doctor a couple of days before, and on the 4th, and that's when I found out. And I remember, I mean, the first thing I said, because they were like, well, you need to go to the hospital, and we're going to have to induce labor and all this other stuff. And I was completely adamant, no, not doing it, and you cannot make me. So, um, you have that denial that you have to go through. You do go through all of the stages of grief, and that grief doesn't just go away immediately, because that's still your child regardless. So I don't think the number of years that go by, it never really goes away. It gets better. I mean, I can look back on it now and not be upset and crying like I was, the first year, 2, 3, 4 years. It would really make me sad. But, I'm can look back on it now with and remember it without being so upset, and know that, okay, he's in heaven. I'm going to get there one day, and then we'll get to play and have fun and stuff like that. So,
Gotcha. I think
but I
that's
would just say, they're still a member of your family, and don't let anybody else tell you anything different. They're yours. So,
I would agree with that 100%. And you sparked a question that I want to ask. I've never lost anyone that close to me. I just lost my grandma. In fact, we're going up to her funeral tomorrow. But in her case, I'm totally at peace with it. It was time for her to go. She was 83 or 4 years old and had been sick and things like that. But I've never lost someone prematurely, for lack of a better word. And whenever I know someone who does, I never know what to say to them. Are there certain things that people said to you during that process that were helpful? And are there other things that you'd say, don't ever say that to someone who just lost somebody? Do you have anything you can say about that?
um, the best thing that anyone did during that time was just listen. You don't even need to say anything. I mean, it wasn't the words that was important. It was just the being there. And oops, sorry. I'm not sure why. Oh,
You're okay if you need to take that.
but I mean, that was really the best thing. I mean, you don't need to say anything. Sometimes just being there is enough. And sometimes, the best thing was like my parents came in, my mom especially. I mean, she helped with the other kids and just did what needed to be done. So I could take the time to just really go through and process what was going on.
So helping by listening and helping by being there to give support and things like that are more helpful necessarily than anything that people can say.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. So, because sometimes, the words are not necessarily needed.
Okay. Well, let's jump in and talk about the special needs kids that you have because that was the main purpose of this. I actually just learned before the interview that Marcy had a stillbirth and wanted to talk about that for a minute. Um, so, Marcy, are all your kids, do they have the same disabilities or various disabilities, or talk about that for a minute?
They don't all have exactly the same, but there are a lot of similarities. So the issue with, is this genetic? Is this learned? Is it environmental? I truly believe a lot of it can be genetic, um, because we come to find out, I'll son a lot because he has the majority of the issues. We came to find out, now this has been years later, when I was pregnant with our last child. And let's see, he's turned 2, so he was born in 2014. We actually went to the women's center here in Charlotte, and they do genetics and stuff like that. Well, they had taken blood from me and from my oldest son because they were concerned there was something on one of the ultrasounds that they were a little worried about. And what the blood work showed, and I can't remember the actual name of the chromosome, I'd have to go back and pull it out, but there was a chromosome that my oldest son shared with me that if you have it, there's a whole litany of things that it can cause. And he has this chromosome. And a lot of the issues that he dealt with and does deal with are issues that can be caused by having that chromosomal deficiency, whatever it is. It's like he's there's a deletion in his DNA of this one chromosome. And it was like, oh, well, this explains a lot. But at the time when he was first diagnosed, you have to remember he's going to be, 14 this year. So at the time we were going through all of the process of getting him diagnosed and what's causing all of this, these type of tests were not available at the time. So this is a new insight into what's going on. So it was something that actually I think I was pregnant with my youngest daughter when they did this, and she's going to be 8. So as time moves on and as time progresses, there may be more insight that we can gain medically over, what's causing these issues. But I do feel like, especially based on that there's a lot that's genetic. Um, you know, and that was a new thing that kind of surprised me. But yeah, yeah.
So, what are the? You mentioned a couple diagnoses. ADHD. You said one of your kids has,
They all have ADHD.
and then
Like
O.
my oldest daughter was never diagnosed with ODD, but I believe she has ODD. Realized that after my oldest son was diagnosed with ODD. Um,
And what is ODD?
Oppositional defiance disorder.
Okay.
Um, Now, my oldest son and my oldest daughter also have something that's called sensory integration dysfunction, and they're on opposite ends of that spectrum. The oldest daughter is extremely sensitive to touch, and my oldest son is the one who was running into the walls and the cabinets for the fun of it, trying to get that input. You treat it the same, but like I said, they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, because my daughter's like, you barely touch her and she's screaming that it hurts. And meanwhile, he's running to the walls for the fun of it. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, we're gonna make.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and he was also the one where he was very delayed with his physical attributes. So he was developmentally delayed. So it's really kind of funny because, my youngest daughter, as a comparison, she had none of those issues. She hit every developmental stage when she was supposed to hit it. But come to find out, she still had to have an IEP for speech. And it wasn't because she was delayed in speech, it was because she was having a hard time with the articulation of the words.
Gotcha.
So, all these diagnoses can vary very, very much. So it could be very mild or it could be very severe, like my oldest son.
Gotcha.
It's just, it
Okay.
varies
Well.
per child.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have Marcy in the future make some little videos about tips that she does to help her kids out dealing with ODD and these different disorders. But today's interview, we wanted to just kind of entertain a little bit, hopefully uplift, let you know that there's other people dealing with similar things out there like you, and hopefully that will put a smile on your face. Hopefully that will uplift you and things like that. And so I want to start out by asking you, Marcy, what is the funniest or one of the funniest experiences? Maybe it wasn't funny at the time. I call them cry then, laugh later experiences. But
Oh boy.
what's a real funny experience that you had with one of or a couple of your children?
This has my oldest son written all over it. Okay, he's good for these. Um, when he was a toddler, this is one we will never forget, I promise you. We had, oh, I'm just trying to think the best way to do this. This was when it was just my oldest daughter and him. There wasn't any other kids. And he was probably around 2, maybe close to 3, because he was walking at this point. And he was talking a little bit. So he was in between 2 and 3. And we had a small fish tank in the living room. And I don't know if you're familiar with these fish, but they're big. They're huge. They're called Oscars, and they get to where they kind of get the size of the tank. They get huge. So we had those in the living room, and then my oldest daughter had a betta fish. He didn't know any better. And betta fish, you have to keep them separate, because if you put them in with another betta fish, they fight and they carry on and do all that stuff. So she had her little betta fish tank, and we had the fish tank. And I mean, he knew, I would let him help feed the fish and all that stuff. So he kind of knew what to do. Um, So we get up one morning. This is when he's notorious for waking up in the middle of the night, because we had him in the toddler bed, the little day bed, so it didn't have the rails, because what good is that going to do when he's climbing out and falling on the floor? So, we had already switched the bed over. And we get up in the morning, and I go in the living room, and there's been a toddler involved, because one of the fish is out on the coffee table. All of
Was
the
it
fish supplies,
was it still
every
alive?
no. No, it was not alive. All of the fish supplies were out. The tank lid was open. Of course, he's in his room in the bed. Well, he finally gets up, and the only thing we hear, my oldest daughter, she's running in there. Bob is gone. The beta fish. The beta fish is gone. I don't know where Bob is. And so here comes the oldest son. He wakes up and, because she's screaming, carrying on, having a fit. And he comes in there and he's like pointing at the fish on the table. Ate Bob. Ate Bob. I mean, that's all we get. Apparently, after we kind of, calmed the situation down and, kind of figured out this is what he did. Apparently, he thought Bob the beta fish was lonely and needed to be in the fish tank with the other fish. So he found the little fish scoop. I mean, he's not even 3. So, and he goes and he gets the fish scoop. He scoops out Bob the beta fish, puts him in the fish tank with the Oscars, who see the beta fish and go, hello, dinner time. So one of the Oscars eats Bob the beta fish. So then, I don't know how he does it. You have to remember, this is a toddler. Somehow or another, he thinks if he can get the Oscar out of the fish tank, he can rescue Bob the beta fish that the Oscar fish just ate. So we get up in the morning, there's, fish paraphernalia everywhere, a dead Oscar fish on the coffee table, which is huge. And all he's running around the house saying is, ate Bob. So, yeah.
he was gonna he was gonna cut it open
Yeah.
and get the fish out of its stomach or something.
Yeah, I think that's what he was trying to do. So we've got an upset oldest daughter, we've got an upset toddler, and we're sitting here going, how did we miss this? But that
That's
was only one. And that was like within a series of a week, we had 3 incidents. But that one is pretty memorable.
that's intense. You'll have to put that one in your book for sure. Um,
Hmm.
what what was the one of the most scary experiences where you were just terrified of something they did, either because it hurt their safety or somebody else's safety, or I don't know, what was a scary experience you had with your children?
I have a feeling this is going to need to be my oldest son's book.
A book for each child, huh?
Phew, boy. He has a tendency to, and I think I'm not sure if it's the ADHD in him or not, but he has a tendency, focusing is always an issue. Now, if it's a screen item, they can hyper focus like nobody's business. But as far as focusing and being cognizant of surroundings, he's always had a little bit of an issue with. So there have been multiple instances where, like, let's say we're walking from the parking lot to the store, he's not watching, and I'm trying to wrangle with the younger kids, and he's just walking off in front of cars and everything else. And there have been a couple times where my oldest daughter has like grabbed him by the back of the shirt and jerked him back out of the way because he's paying no attention whatsoever, and there's a car coming. And I'm like, hello, did you know we talked about you need to look both ways and then you need to look again, or you really need to wait on the group that you're with. And he's constantly, even if he doesn't know where he's going, he's going to be first. That's one thing, and that's just an in general watch out. But the one thing that I will never forget, and this could fall under a funny story if you really wanted it, is we had gone out to eat one night and he was probably about 2. These parental leash things that people are always saying, I would never put that on my child. Get them. They're very helpful. um, Packing everything up, getting ready to leave. We'd finished eating and we were getting ready to go pay. And looking around, I'm like, where is my child? Where is he at? Well, he had wandered off to the front of the restaurant where they had like a little waiting area for people to getting to go orders and stuff like that. And I'm running around looking for him like, oh my gosh, where'd he go? He was right here. And walked up front, and he had climbed into this woman's lap and just made himself at home. I'm like, excuse me, that's not me. You need to get down from there. But luckily,
That's
I mean, she was very good natured, but that was a really scary moment for me because I mean, they can disappear that quick. And
yep.
he has no fear of strangers. And, obviously I have fear of strangers for him. I mean, I don't want to squash his, being able to go up to people and talk and carry conversations and stuff, but that's kind of scary when you think about it. So, yeah.
That that's fun.
That could be a funny or an uh-oh moment. So
Could have gone either way.
he's got lots of those.
Yeah, my kids have done that too. They mistaked us for somebody else, started following someone else into a bathroom or something like that. So now one more story. Let's hear a story that when it just made you break down into tears. What's a story that made you cry with one of your experiences with your children?
Oh, I think probably the worst one was just the entire pregnancy after we had that stillbirth. Um, just going in. Oh my gracious, that was just a nightmare. That whole period was just a nightmare because I was literally in a state of panic from the time I became pregnant with my now oldest son until he got here. And I think what was the most heartbreaking thing, even after getting through the pregnancy, was to see him still not doing well because when he was born, he was in a rush before he even got here because the labor went so quickly that he still had fluid in his lungs. And so he was in NICU for a week. Um, and that was just horrendous after that pregnancy and not being able to, I mean, because literally they gave him to me for like all of 2 seconds and then they took him back because he wasn't breathing properly. And then he was whisked away to the NICU. um, and he was there for a week. So having to be separated right after, just the trauma of that whole entire pregnancy was just devastating. And then, we finally were able to take him home and he had to be in the sun because his bilirubin was too high. He wouldn't nurse. And I mean, it was just that whole time period was just an emotional upheaval. And I mean, there were days I would just literally just break down on the way back and forth to the hospital because, I was trying to pump and so he would have milk and all this other stuff. I mean, it was just a lot. I mean, and some of it were just tears of thankfulness that he was here, that he was okay. But some of it was just, out of the stress that there was just so much. And of course the older daughter at the time, I think there was some resentment there too because he required so much care and he required so much attention. So I felt so bad because I had to give all of my attention to him and I wasn't able to give as much to her, so I felt bad about that. So just that whole time period was just awful. It was awful.
Have you had have you had any moments or any experiences through all this, through raising your four children, that made you happy or grateful for these experiences or for these children?
Oh, yeah, because I can't tell you how many people I have met that have children with special needs. And I mean, one of my really good friends right now, her daughter has a lot of special needs. And I mean, her and my oldest son, they're like on the same level near about. I mean, like mine has never been diagnosed with autism, but we feel like there are some autistic traits there. We just have never had him officially tested, but I'm able to relate more with people that have kids with special needs. Like her daughter, really, I can get along with her because I know how to approach her. And I understand where she's coming from. So when, there have been a couple of instances where, like she said, we've scheduled something with these people and they haven't been able to come. I've been able to commiserate with her because I'm like, that's one of the big no-nos with these kids is you cannot tell them that you're going to do A and B happens. You just can't do that. So even with all of the struggle and all of the frustration and all of the, I'm amazed I have hair at this point. The one good thing out of all of that is that you'd be amazed how many parents are just so relieved to have somebody else that understands.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of the time you get these strange looks when you go to the store. It's like, you need to control your kids, and why are they running around? And you're sitting here thinking, if you only knew they're actually behaving right now. So it's kind of nice to have somebody to actually, when you meet other people that have the same issues, it's nice to be able to go, oh yeah, I've had an experience like that. Oh yeah, I understand. So
Yep.
that's kind of been a little bit of a fun part, is just, being able to talk to other people and say, oh yeah, been there, done that. Yep. Oh, it gets better.
That's good.
So,
Well, Marcy, thank you for your time. We're gonna let you go for today, but we'll have you back on in some future videos, maybe giving some tips of things you've learned that help with ODD and different things like that. But I wanted to thank you, and anyone who's listening to this podcast or this broadcast. We have a present for you at Teach Mom How. We always try to give you something every time we do a video if we can. And today it has nothing to do with special needs, but I know all moms, especially my wife, like makeup. And so we have a free makeup brush. It's a really nice one if you click the link in this video, or if you go to freebrush.teachmomhow.com, freebrush.teachmomhow.com. They have this professional makeup brush. I know nothing about it other than that my wife loves it. And you can pick that up. You just pay the shipping. I think it's like $4 or something like that. But anyways, if that interests you, go check that out. And Marcy, any last words of encouragement you want to give to the other moms out there?
it does get better. I promise. I promise it does get better. Just hang in there, and just sometimes moms need a timeout too. So don't be afraid to use a timeout.
Sounds good. Yeah, give yourself a timeout. I know we don't even have any kids with special needs, and my wife needs a timeout from time to time with 4 kids. So, all right, great advice, Marcy. Thanks for your time, and tune in next time to teachmomhow.com.